Hey, everybody, and welcome to our Sunday afternoon live edition. So my name is Nathan Warnock. I am one half of the Marriage by Design team. The better half has escaped. She's run for the hills. The kids and I have finally driven her away. No, she takes a trip every year with her mom to go. They go gallivanting around the United States and do some shopping together and just some time, mother-daughter wise. And it's great. She always looks forward to it every year. And I know her mom does as well. And, probably debatable about, whether she looks forward to it most to get away from the four little ones that travel around with her all day, every day. But in any event, thrilled that she's been able to do that. So for this week, both for our Sunday live right now, as well as for the two episodes that are going to come out this week, I'm flying solo. So, I spent a lot of time thinking about what do I want to share this week when it's just me, because there are, in my opinion, some topics that are difficult to talk about when Andrea is here. And that'll make more sense as you listen to our episode that'll come out tomorrow morning, Monday morning, and also on Thursday morning. So we will have two episodes this week, Marriage Monday and Family Friday. I'm going to fly the ship on both of those. So as we launch into our Saturday live and people are filing in, please throw up in the comments what's up so I can see who's joining us today. If you have questions about me, about Andrea, about our channel, about marriage in general, or family, please feel free to put those in the comments and we'll talk about those. We do cover every comment that we get, so please don't hesitate to put those in there. Otherwise, kind of the flow of our Sunday live is primarily to interact with you as the community, but also to kind of just cover, some things that have been in the news or have come up in our lives over the course of the last week that we just wanted to submit to you guys to think about as your weekend winds to a close. So with Andrea being away with her mom, as I mentioned, on their kind of getaway, it had me thinking a little bit about community. And community is something that we've stressed over and over and over again on this channel as being super important. But I wanted to dig into that just a little bit and flesh it out during the next 10 or 15 minutes that we have this time together. And if you have questions or comments, I'd love to see those again in the comments as well. So there are two aspects of this that I want to talk about. The first is the community of the individual. And this really applies to you as an individual, whether you're married, single, engaged, none of that, divorced, none of that really matters. Because the reality of the matter is we need to have a community of people around us. And I don't just mean a group of people that we know, because a lot of us, as a defense mechanism, we have a lot of acquaintances who sort of know of us, but not a lot of people that really know who I am. And this is something that I struggled with, as I've reflected on the first 8 years of our marriage. And for those of you who either know us or have followed our channel for the last year, you know what a disaster our marriage was for the first 8 years. If you're new to the channel, I would love you to go over to YouTube or go to iTunes or Google Podcasts, wherever you download your podcasts, and go back to the very first Marriage Mondays that we did on our channel, Marriage by Design podcast. We give our testimony of our marriage, and that will be important for purposes of the Marriage Monday that's going to come out tomorrow morning. But during those first 8 years, I really didn't have any community. I mean, I had people, I was in undergrad and I went to law school. And so I had a lot of people that knew me, like knew who I was, and we'd go hang out or grab a drink or, whatever. I even had some people I hung out with pretty regularly at the time, but I really didn't have anyone that knew me. Right, knew me at a deep enough level to be able to ask questions that matter, right? Questions like, how's your marriage? And, or how's your relationship with the Lord? How do you feel about your life right now, right? These are questions that are deeper, more intimate questions. I can't just walk up to somebody at the grocery store and go, "Hey, I'm Nathan. How's your marriage?" I mean, I can, but I'm not likely to get an honest answer from that person, particularly if they're in a bad place in their marriage, because there's no, I call it moral authority, right? There's no fundamental level of trust that I have with that individual. And that has to be pursued. And for the first 8 years of our marriage, I had none of that. And even after that 8-year period, I had a couple of people. You've heard me talk about Tim. In fact, Tim, my mentor's been on this channel before talking with us about mentoring. But over time, I kind of grew that relationship with him. And then, over further time, I grew kind of additional relationships. And from the individual side, that's kind of what I want to talk about for a minute, is what that looks like. Is this even something that we see in the Bible? And if it is, what examples can we take from the Bible and then put into practice practically in our lives? So, and again, if you have questions at any time, please feel free to throw them in the comments and I'll address those as they come in. But there are really two examples of relationships in the Bible that I want to use as an example. And of course, there's a million examples of relationships in the Bible, some good, some bad. But the two that I really want to focus on and challenge you as an individual to think about in your life is first the example of Jesus Christ in the Gospels. You can look at any of Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, and specifically look at his disciples. Now, the term disciples has with it the connotation of students. And in a lot of respects, the 12 disciples that Jesus kept around him were students of his, of course. I mean, he was God, right? He was teaching them about his kingdom. But the disciples served additional roles in Jesus' life in that they were his group. They were his friend group. And so as we look at that group of friends that Jesus had, what you see is that he had, of course, 12 guys, right? And he called them around him. But then within that 12 group of guys that knew him, that had intimate conversation with him and spent intimate time with him, he had within that a subset of just 3 guys, Peter, James, and John, who were his kind of inner circle, the guys that he went when he went up for the transfiguration, where he was going to show his closest friends, the ascension and this incredible event. Those were the guys that he took with him. So even within that broader group of friends, he had his closer, really intimate friends. And then beyond that, he had the one, right? John is referred to as the disciple to whom Jesus loved. He had a special relationship with John. And so if we take that example and we apply it, superimpose it over our lives, the question for you is, what does your circle look like? Can you, point to 12 individuals in your life who aren't your family that are your intimate group, right? People that truly know you, right? You probably have a much larger circle than 12 of people that know who you are, or even people that you hang out with, or people that you talk to and, call from time to time, love to hang out with on the weekends or whatever. But do you have 12 people that truly know you? And that's a question, for you guys to ask yourselves. And then within that 12, do you have a smaller group of people that truly speak into your life, that you share even those closer, more intimate details with? And then beyond that, who's the one that you have, that one person who is your closest, most intimate friend? And for us who are married, that really should be our spouse, right? I mean, our spouse should be that closest, most intimate friend that we have, and the one that we truly open up to. And if we don't get to that place in our marriage, then our marriage is going to get off the rails at one point or another. At the very least, it's not going to be the marriage that God intended us to have. So that's the first example. The second example that I wanted to challenge you in is the example of the Apostle Paul. So Paul had a couple of specific guys in his life, and he had more than one that are referred to in the Bible, but two specifically that were sort of regularly associated with Paul. One was Barnabas, and one was Timothy. And early on in his ministry, we see Paul and Barnabas working closely together as they traveled across, the land and ministered to people and set up these churches and kind of ministered to those churches. So you've got Paul and Barnabas that are working closely together, and then you've got Paul and Timothy, who we see particularly later on in Paul's mission, where he's raising Timothy up as like a son in the faith. And so the challenge for you guys to think about in your community is, do you have someone who is, or a group of someones who are like your Paul and Barnabas, meaning, in the things you're called to in your life? It could be parenting, it could be being a stay-at-home mom, it could be being a provider and spiritual leader for your home if you're the husband, it could be ministry that you and your spouse feel called to, or you individually feel called to. Do you have someone else who has a same or similar calling to you that you're able to spend time commiserating about the things that you're going through, bouncing questions off of? So often let's take marriage as an example. We surround ourselves with people who are not in the similar place to us, particularly as a young. So let's take a young married couple, for example. Your single college buddies are not good people to have as this sort of Barnabas role in your new marriage, because what do they know about it? Right? I mean, they're not called to the same thing you are, marriage, in the case of what we're talking about. They're doing whatever they're doing, college, young career, whatever. And I'm not even saying the bad thing. That's what they're called to. But you, if you're married, have been now called to marriage. And so to, seek advice, bounce marital ideas off of, et cetera, off people who don't have the same calling as you doesn't make a lot of sense. And yet we do it all the time. And then it's problematic when these things don't work out. So the Paul and Barnabas relationship is, do you have those people in your lives that are they're in the trenches with you, they have the same or similar calling to what you have, and y'all are pushing forward in this calling together? The second group of people is the Paul-Timothy example. So what we're thinking about when we think about Paul and Timothy is an older mentor figure, right? Paul had been through it. He and Barnabas had set up these churches during his first mission. They had served it. They'd been in prison. They'd been persecuted. They'd been through the trenches together. And now Timothy comes into the picture. And Paul sort of adopts Timothy as a spiritual son and begins to raise Timothy up to take on Paul's ministry as the race that Paul's running, as he referred to it, begins to come to a close. And so the question is, do you have two things? There's two parts of that. Do you have people in your life who are mentoring you, who are the Paul to you? And it could be, again, as a stay-at-home mom. It could be as someone involved in a trade or business. It could be in schooling. It could be it could be in a sport, right? If you're an athlete. But do you have someone who has been through it, who's come out the other side, who has a sports career, is a mother or whatever that you would want to be, right? You want that person to look like what you want to look like, right? To Timothy, Paul was an example of what Timothy wanted to be. And so Paul was a perfect person to call him up and train him in that. So for you, do you have someone in your life that if I talked to everyone watching this and said, who is the Paul in your life, you would be able to go, oh, that individual is so-and-so, right? I always encourage, doesn't have to be, but I always encourage it to be someone outside of your family, because those familial ties and the love that they have for you as family can obviously bias their opinion. So I encourage everybody, find someone generally older who's been through it and have a formal mentor relationship with them. This is really what Tim is to me. He and I get together, certainly not as much as I wish we would get together, but we get together as much as our schedules allow, and I bounce things off of him that I'm going through in my family and as a father and as a husband and as a working, a professional, and he gives me guidance and helps me avoid maybe pitfalls that he says he fell into in his life. And it is just an immensely valuable and rich relationship. And then finally, the other side of that is, who's the Timothy in your life, right? Who's the individual or individuals that you've identified in your life that you're pouring into, right? Maybe as a father or as a husband, you've identified maybe some newly married couples in your sphere of influence, and you've taken the opportunity to really talk to those husbands or wives, depending on what gender you are, and you're sharing with them what you've learned in your marriage. It's such a rich and valuable thing for us to not just hoard the things that we've learned as we grow older, but also to pass those things on down. And for me, all the things that Tim has shared and taught me over the years, to not just sort of hold on to those things and not pass them on through, but to pass them on to other men who can benefit from them, in the hopes that they don't make the mistakes that now not only that Tim made, but that Tim made and that I made, and hopefully they can stand on our shoulders and more quickly get to a marriage, in the case of what we're talking about, that is reflective of what God desires for their lives. So first and foremost, the example of Jesus and the disciples. Think about that a little bit and how that relates to your sphere of influence. And then secondly, the examples of Paul and Barnabas and Paul and Timothy. Do you have sort of brothers and sisters in arms that you're doing life with together? And then do you have a mentor in your life? And are you mentoring someone else? If you build that community up in your life, then you're going to have a richer and more robust life than those that don't. And so many of us want to isolate. Don't isolate. Build this community and take it seriously in your life. So then how does that relate to couples? Well, I've been watching a little bit of that documentary called How I Met Your Mother. Not a documentary, but it is a good show. And my brother got me onto it. And there's a whole episode about, there's one married couple that hangs out with these other single folks. And the married couple is obsessed with finding other married couple friends. And there's a whole episode about how couples need other couple friends. Even when you were single, you didn't need that. But now that you're a couple, you desire other couple friends. And if you don't get that, you're going to freak out. And it's a very funny episode. But it got me thinking, a lot of that is true. You do, as a couple, you do need other couple friends. And those same rules about Jesus and the disciples, or examples, I guess, not rules, about Jesus and the disciples and Paul and Barnabas and Paul and Timothy, those apply to us as a couple. Right? Hopefully, as an individual, you have, if you're a guy, you have a man. If you're a woman, you have a woman who is your mentor. But do you have a couple that is mentoring you? Because that's an amazing thing. I mean, for Andrea and I, our mentors, Tim and his wife Carla, they also mentor us as a couple. Right? When we're struggling with something, we get together with them and work through it. They challenge us in, are we staying close to the Lord? Are we carving out enough time for family? Are we, where are we at with pains and bitternesses in our lives? And they mentor us not just as individuals, but also as a couple. But we need that as a couple. So I would strongly encourage you, find that mentor couple. And this isn't just something where you go, oh yeah, that's our mentor couple. But if I ask them, they go, I don't know. I mean, we get together every once in a while. No, I'm talking about a formal, where you formally ask them to, get out down on one knee and say, will you be our mentor couple? Right? That's what you do. And they'll look at you weird, but it'll work out. So yeah, that it's the same thing that applies, right? In the same way, as a couple, are you keeping open eyes and an open mind and an open heart before the Lord to Him bringing other couples into your lives that you can pour into? You don't have to be perfect to mentor and raise up another couple. You just have to be available. And you don't have to be available all the time, because I'm sure you have a busy life like we all do. But you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to make yourself available some of the time, so that you can really pour into another couple. And it's such a rewarding experience. We're discipling another couple to have God's best in their marriage, and it's really awesome. So whether you're single, whether you're a couple, taking the example of Jesus and his disciples, the inner three, right? Peter, James, and John, and then John, Jesus' best friend, using that as an example of sort of, do you have that community in place where your friend group sort of funnels into more intimate groups of friends and those that really know you at a deep level and are able to ask you the difficult questions? And then also as an individual and as a couple, do you have a Barnabas? Do you have Barnabases in your life, those that are going through the same thing you're going through and can commiserate, can encourage, can give you those pep talks when you need it, and that you guys can get through it together? And then do you have a Paul couple in your life or individual in your life who is someone who's been through it already, that is willing and able to teach you and pass down what they have learned? And then finally, do you have a Timothy couple or individual in your life, which is someone, generally younger or younger in the faith or younger in their career, that you can spend time pouring into, teaching the things that you've learned in the hopes that they can stand on your shoulders and achieve greater things than you because of the investment you've placed into their lives? That's the challenge for you guys to think about this week. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bounce out. I'm getting messages from Andrea. She's Christmas shopping, so I'm sure I have a whole bunch of things to respond to. But I love being able to spend the time with you guys. I'm grateful that you take time out of your busy weekend to spend with us. Next week, we will probably be back at the normal time. Normally, we're on here live at 8:30 p.m. Central Time on YouTube and Facebook. So I hope to have you join us then. There will be 2 episodes coming out on our channel this week. Marriage Monday will come out bright and early tomorrow morning, and then Family Friday will be released on Thursday morning. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. Hope that you've had a blessed weekend, that you have a blessed, strong end of the weekend, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one, and remember, God is for your marriage.